Former BOJ Assistant Governor Kazuo Momma. So no surprises, right?
No surprises today.
So what do you want to hear then from Governor Ueda?
Well, obviously, how the BOJ is going to look at the indicators in terms of the sustainability of 2% inflation going forward, and how wage inflation is translating into a broader CPI service inflation, because that will be the key indicator that will shape the monetary policy going forward. And the second thing is that how and when the BOJ is considering reducing its balance sheet, because today's decision indicates that the balance sheet size will roughly remain the same, because they will continue buying JGB at the same amount that they are now doing.
So there's no tightening there?
No tightening there. No QT at all today.
Yeah. So when they put out the statement that says essentially they expect accommodative financial conditions to remain, what is that? How do you read that?
Well, that is, theoretically speaking, very broad concept, because right now interest rate is around 0 and inflation rate is 2%, more than 2%, which means that we are still deep in negative territory in terms of real interest rates. So even though with some of the interest rate hikes, still we could be said accommodative policy. But I think the key, the code from the BOJ, from that kind of expression is that we are not rushing in terms of normalization of monetary policy for the time being.
So you still feel one and done? There's nothing in this statement that indicates that there's going to be further tightening?
Exactly. Statement itself doesn't say anything about the further normalization going forward. I think Mr. Ueda will be probably asked about that today's press conference afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon, and he will probably retain ambiguity about what they are going to do and when, the time schedule of that. So I think generally speaking, BOJ is right to address the situation by saying keeping accommodative monetary policy condition, but he doesn't make any clear sense about exactly when and what the interest rate is going to raise.
Is ambiguity what we need right now, or do we want clarity that we are in an interest rate hiking cycle?
I mean, given the situation of the uncertainty about the level of the wage pressure and how it's going to translate into price pressures, I think still ambiguity is something BOJ has to hold.
And inflation, they feel pretty confident that it's going to stay above the 2% target. The statement says year-over-year CPI increase likely to be above 2% through fiscal year 2024.
Yes.
We don't have any more clarity beyond that. The wage increases were a good step forward. But again, there are underlying weaknesses in the economy, is there not? And a lot of that inflation, wasn't it not, as well, kind of from the weak yen, foreigners coming in, and prices, a lot of retailers have pricing power in places where there are a lot of tourists. Is that sustainable?
Well, tourists still account for only 1% of whole GDP, and most of the consumers are still very cautious about spending. As a matter of fact, consumer spending has been in negative territory for the last 3 quarters. So it's really amazingly weak as a matter of fact. So I think the BOJ would like to see how wage inflation this time around will really translate into a strength in consumer spending going forward that will make price pressure more sustainable for 2 to 3 years. So even though BOJ said it's likely to have 2% inflation for until 2025, 2026 actually, still I think the BOJ will have more evidence that they are really right about that.
How significant is it that they've come through with what was reported that they will no longer purchase ETFs that's been in place since 2010?
It's been present since 2010, but at the same time, there was a relatively big overhaul back in 2021. Since then, for the last 3 years, BOJ didn't purchase ETFs so aggressively. As a matter of fact, for REIT is concerned, BOJ didn't buy any REIT at all for entire last year. So I think the transition will be relatively smoothly done.